I'm a night security guard and I just watched surveillance footage of my own death. By Mr. Outlaw. As the title states, I'm an after-hours security guard for a medium-sized downtown office building. Not in a terribly dangerous city, just average. Glamorous, I know. On top of that, I'm either losing my mind or in the midst of some really strange shit. A few nights ago, my boss gave me some security tapes he wanted me to look over. Apparently the guard that I had rotated shifts with had quit. But it was a bit unconventional. He didn't give anybody any prior notice. It appears as if he'd simply left in the middle of his last shift, and we haven't been able to contact him since. On the same night, there had been a break-in. Seemingly nothing stolen or damaged, just the front glass door, which was now shattered. Now, I knew about the break-in beforehand, but not about the guard. It was weird, but this is kind of a shitty job, so it wasn't anywhere near shocking. My boss wanted me to try and identify who had done it, and said that the cops are lazy and it would take weeks for them to even look at it. His quote, not mine. Sure, it was an annoying request, but it's on me for not finishing college. It was a pretty quiet night when I got around to it. My boss told me to look it over in my own time, but that wasn't happening. At around 2 a.m., I finally began watching. It took a lot of fast-forwarding until I finally got to something. We were right. The old security guard, Chris, literally got up and left at exactly 2:17 a.m. that night. Even weirder was that he left all of his shit behind. He just walked away. Okay, I thought. Shit happens. Whatever. I kept watching until the break-in at 3 a.m. Some medium-built dude dressed in a stereotypical burglar outfit, ski mask included, took a baseball bat and smashed through the front glass door. I'm pretty sure that Chris never locked it behind him when he left, so that was a waste. Also, our alarm didn't go off, because we didn't have one. Cut costs wherever you can, right? It's a wonder that I still work here, given the fact that some guy could literally break in, stab me to death, and the cops wouldn't even know about it till the next morning. But that's besides the current point. The intruder walked in and entered the stairwell, so I tracked him. A bit of a complicated process, but I finally found him on the 6th floor. That's when he took out what looked like a wire. I felt my skin crawl a bit upon seeing that. There's only a few reasons as to why someone would carry wires around in their pockets, and one of them stands out as being particularly unsavory. He started making his way down the corridor in a manner that I can only describe as methodical. Purposeful, even. As if whoever he was stalking was not yet aware of his presence. Moments later, the door to the room up ahead of him flung open. He reacted quickly, ducking into an adjacent hallway as somebody else came out. And let me tell you that I was not prepared for who it was. It was me. A near replica. I say near because the guy's face looked borderline emaciated, while his clothes barely clung to his limbs. I was more of a muscular build myself, but I'd been skinny before. I knew what I looked like. And that was it. My copy was wearing what looked like some kind of white, heavy-duty jacket. Almost looked like something a soldier would wear in an Arctic climate. On top of that, there was a large streak of red covering his chest. Probably doesn't take a detective to figure out what it was, given the circumstances. He also appeared to be exhausted, with one bony hand holding the wall whilst he was doubled over, exhaling like hell. Eventually, he started moving, stumbling towards the intersecting hallways where the mystery man was presumably waiting for him, hands clasped around the wire. I found myself instinctively reaching for my phone to call 911 when I realized that this was not happening in real time. But even if it was, how was I supposed to describe the situation? As my copy passed by, the mystery man pounced on him, but it seemed as he was anticipating it. My copy, that is. A vicious struggle ensued. Despite my copy's frail appearance, he still managed to hold the upper hand against the mystery man for a while. Let me tell you, I sure as hell can't fight like that. The combination of military-grade jacket and the hand-to-hand training that this guy clearly practiced yielded a few possible avenues of explanation. But I was going to need a lot more info in order to really understand what was going on here. Despite being pounded on for a good few minutes, the mystery man eventually landed a lucky uppercut that staggered my copy. He quickly took the opportunity, rushing and forcing the wire around his neck until he went limp. That struggle ended. What followed was interesting. He dragged the body back to the room that my copy had come out of and shut the door behind him. I fast-forwarded up until today. Nobody else came out. Nobody went in. There was nothing that I could do for the rest of my shift but just sit there, absolutely floored. The next day, my boss asked me what I'd seen. I told him a fabricated version of what had happened, that some dipshit high school kids in masks broke the door for fun. Nothing we can do about it beyond installing an actual security system. He said he'd look into it. Sure he will. Now I considered just forcing myself to forget about it. That would have yielded more sanity. But some things are just too bizarre to overlook. During my next shift, I decided to take a look at the 6th floor myself. I assumed that it'd just be a bunch of cubicles up there, but I was obviously interested in one specific room. Once up there, I started walking around. It almost felt surreal being in a place where something so strange had just happened. In fact, it got me questioning whether or not I'd just lost my mind for a few minutes, if anything on that tape was even real. But I got my answer when I saw the stain on the carpet. It was barely noticeable, but I knew what I was looking for. A speck of blood from the struggle. I wasn't sure whether it was from my copy or the mystery man. I kept going down the corridor, trying to locate the room that my copy had come out of. From the footage, it appeared evident that it had been the 4th door on the right. I tried the handle. Locked. And then I tried something that would most certainly cost me my job. But I rationalized it by realizing that if anybody was ever going to watch those tapes, it was once again going to be me. I kicked the door down and headed in. It was a conference room, but one that looked to be under renovation. There were dry paint cans, an unfinished carpet job, and drywall covering the walls. But nothing unusual. Yet. There's bound to be something here. For the first few hours I stalked the room. I could not find anything noteworthy. The other way out of the room was a stairwell exit, so it was reasonable to assume that he simply escaped through there. I was about to give up when I stumbled upon something hidden under one of the desks. A device of sorts. Maybe. I couldn't really tell you. Despite being rather small, it was incredibly heavy. A cylindrical-shaped metallic item. It was smooth all round, save for a few buttons that did nothing when I pressed them. And a dried, bloody thumbprint. Wonder who that belonged to. I stood there, trying to decipher the particulars of the item for an indistinguishable amount of time. But an abrupt noise jarred me back to attentiveness. Footsteps in the hallway. Footsteps, getting closer. I was not doing my job. A few ideas regarding the identity of the intruder ran through my head. Obviously, none of them were good, and one of them was really bad. In any case, I took a beeline for the stairwell, and I took the metal thing with me. I didn't go back to the building until around 5:40 a.m., 20 minutes before the end of my shift. To my surprise, the new glass door that we'd installed was still intact, but I definitely knew that I'd heard footsteps out in the hallway. Maybe they found another way in. Maybe I'm just going insane. I'm still holding the device in my hand. What am I going to do with it? No fucking idea. But I do know what I'm going to do next. Time to pay a visit to the old security guard. Chris has to have some kind of answer here. I never knew Chris all that well. He was a work friend at best, but I knew where he lived, and that was all the information I needed. I went over to his place and knocked. No response at first. Didn't really know what I was expecting, in all honesty. But I stayed put in my pursuit for answers, continuously pounding on his door. I mean, wasn't it kind of peculiar that he conveniently quit on the night that the break-in took place? I must have stood outside his door for about 20 minutes. Logic would dictate that he simply wasn't home, and I was beginning to believe that. Until I heard a noise on the other side. It sounded like somebody accidentally knocking over a pair of shoes. This motherfucker was silently staring at me through the peephole. "Chris, open the damn door," I said in a borderline threatening tone. Still no explicit response. He wasn't doing a great job of concealing the fact that he clearly knew something about what had happened. And then he slipped a piece of paper under the door in a messy, scribbled writing. This is what it read. "Can't tell anything. He'll know." Okay, I thought to myself. That doesn't sound good. I tried knocking for a few more minutes before his neighbors started poking their heads out. I decided to leave before somebody called the cops on me, but I was not planning on dropping this. I ran the facts through my head as I walked home. He'll know. I didn't want to admit it, but those words greatly concerned me. Who the hell was he? I stewed on these thoughts as I made my way up to my apartment. But when I got there, I realized that I may have fucked up big time. My lock was busted and my door was half open. Call me a pussy, but I dialed 911 immediately. The cops came over in a reasonable amount of time and began the investigation. All in all, the only thing that was taken was $50 cash that I kept in the drawer. That's what they put on the official report, after all. But that wasn't all to the story. There was something else that was missing. The device. In retrospect, the fact that I took it in the first place was a dumbass move on my part. No shit, it was going to have some kind of tracking system in it. I didn't even know what the hell it was. This posed a conundrum for me, of course. It was presumably the mystery man that had broken in. He knows where I live. He also tried murdering somebody who looked just like me. Safe to say, I was probably in danger. The cops said that they would station a vehicle outside my apartment complex in order to keep an eye on me for the night. I wasn't really sure how effective that was going to be, but it couldn't hurt, I suppose. But I still didn't sleep. That night, there was a knock on my door at around 2 a.m. I nearly shit my pants, but then I heard, "Police, open up!" coming from the hall. I looked through the peephole, and it indeed was 2 cops that had been assigned to wait outside my building. One of them chuckled when I opened the door. "How the hell did you do it?" he said to me. "How'd I do what?" I asked in confusion. He simply scoffed and abruptly cuffed me. Although tired as hell, I still relentlessly questioned them about what the fuck they actually thought I did. It was only until I waited for half an hour in an interrogation room when a detective came in and gave me the answer. Apparently, I'd entered the building that I worked in, knocked the new night guard unconscious, and broke into one of the upper floor rooms. They also showed me proof, security footage of exactly what they'd described happening. A person in a stereotypical burglar outfit waltzed in just as the new guard was locking the door for the night. They got into a fight. The mystery man won, but not before the guard managed to rip off his ski mask. The split second that displayed his face, yielding all the evidence they could ever need. It was me. Again. The footage then tracked him all the way up to the 6th floor, where he had entered a room. Guess which one? He was also carrying a bag with him the whole time, and it really wasn't a mystery regarding what it was either. The last recorded footage caught him running out of the fire exit. I couldn't even begin to attempt to answer the detective's questions. I know I didn't do it. Well, you know what I mean. I just kept trying to analyze what kind of situation this put me in. If the mystery man that I'd first seen was also me, then that means there had been at least 2 copies of me out there. And they were trying to kill each other. Then the situation with Chris made more sense. Maybe one of my copies had threatened him. The answer has to be in that device. "Hello?" the detective barked at me. "You listening to me, Mr. Chase?" No, I wasn't. He sighed. "Look, we're just trying to figure things out. What was the plan here?" I reciprocated a sigh. "I don't fucking know." That entire conversation understandably produced 0 conclusions. The detective stepped out and left me alone with my thoughts once again. But no matter how I framed the situation, it was always inexplicable, beyond my comprehension. I sat in shocked silence for around 15 more minutes before the rabbit hole was dug deeper. I started hearing commotion outside of the hallway, and then gunshots. The detective suddenly rushed back into the room, looking confused as hell once he saw me. "How the fuck?" is all he managed to get out. "What's going on?" I asked him. He just shook his head before coming over and pulling me up. All whilst I was still in cuffs. "Got to get you out of here." He started directing me towards a back exit while some kind of hell was going on in the background. At this point, gunshots were going off left and right. We were just about to open the door when I saw a bullet go through his skull. I made it out just before him, so I didn't suffer the same fate. But I saw who had done it. It was my copy, staring blankly at me and standing at the other end of the hall. He fired off a few more shots at me, but they were stopped by the door. Fueled by perplexed adrenaline, I simply started running. I wasn't really sure where I was going, so I ducked into a nearby forested area. Once there, I hid myself in some bushes. I stayed there until sunrise, and luckily, my copy never found me. I heard police sirens all night. There was bound to be a lot of explaining to do if they ever caught me. However, I'm sure they'll just be as confused as I am once they view the security tapes inside the police station. Once I convinced myself that the coast was clear, I got up and tried figuring out where I was. It was an excruciating process trying not to be seen by anybody, given that I still had handcuffs on, but I eventually managed to find my way. I went to somebody who I knew could help me out in this situation. My friend Jack. Now, Jack was a drug dealer, and before you judge me for being friends with a drug dealer, let me preface it by saying that he's only sold weed and cocaine, and he's never killed anybody before. Pretty sure of that. It was about a 3-hour walk from the city to his farmhouse, but I eventually made it, finally getting the damn cuffs off in the process. He asked me questions, of course. Questions I could not answer. Right after shoveling some food down my throat and smoking a joint to calm me down, I went on the internet and looked for any news coverage about the incident. I can't estimate how many cops were killed, but it seemed like there were a lot, so this should have been a big story. But there was nothing. At first, I found a few detailing some vague incident near the location of the police station, but after a few refreshers, they'd disappeared. Somebody was trying to hide this. I can't speculate what was really going on here, but maybe they know something I don't. It's probably better for me that my face isn't plastered across every TV screen in a local diner, but this also begs even more questions. I'll try to explain this situation to Jack later. Maybe he'll believe me. Maybe he'll think I'm a fucking loon. But as for right now, I don't see a ton of options. My copy is probably searching for me right now. The events that have transpired over the past week have taught me that I really don't know much about the world. But I do know one thing. I couldn't stay at Jack's anymore. The few days I've been here have pretty much consisted of me lounging around. I'll admit, I'm scared shitless to go back into the city. All I know is that my copy hasn't been tracking me. I'm not entirely sure how he found me at the police station, but what matters is that he can't seem to find me now. But a new problem has presented itself. I think somebody else is looking for me. Last night I was having a cigarette on the back porch when I noticed some kind of disruption in the crop field. It was dark, and I wasn't really paying good initial attention, so I didn't catch it until it was uncomfortably close. Something was moving around in there, making its way towards the house. I was on extreme edge at this point, so I immediately ran back in. I told Jack what I'd seen, and he subsequently stormed out with his shotgun. I waited, tensed there for what felt like 15 minutes. And then I was jarred by a booming slug, and then another one. Jack rushed back in, eyes frantic, and locked the door behind him. "What the fuck?" he said, sounding petrified. "Don't tell me they're after you." "What did you see? Did it look like me?" He shook his head. "What? No, like some dudes in body armor or some shit, I don't know. Look, if they're after you, then you best speak up." That was the issue. I didn't know who the hell he was talking about. The situation suddenly escalated when I saw flashing red and blue lights coming from outside. The cops were here as well, presumably drawn by the gunshots. "Oh fucking Christ! All my shit's here, they better not snoop around." And then he turned to me. "Look, if something's going on with you, then you should probably leave." "Leave?" I asked him in disbelief. "There's cops out front and weird armored fucking people in the back. Where am I supposed to go?" He shrugged. "I don't know." We could hear heavy footsteps making their way up to his front door. "Suppose you could take your chances and hide here. Can't stop you now." And then they started knocking. I made my way upstairs while Jack opened the door and talked to the cops. As I hid in one of the bedrooms, I eavesdropped on the conversation. It started out calm enough, but it escalated rather quickly, although the voices started raising at an exponential rate. It sounded like Jack was on the defensive about something. I could make out what he was saying, albeit barely. "There's no one here!" All of a sudden the footsteps began storming up the stairs. I didn't have time to ask what the fuck. They were looking for me, and too many obscure reasons to probably count. I opened up the window and jumped out before they could find me. While I was out there, I considered attempting to steal a police car. But I suppose I wasn't ballsy enough for that. Instead, I simply started running. I knew that there was another town that was about a 2-hour drive from where I was. But in terms of walking, well, let's just say I had another trek ahead of me. After about an hour of walking along the empty road at night, a truck stopped for me. Now, under normal circumstances, there was no way in hell that I would have gone with this fucking guy. To put it bluntly, he looked like a serial rapist. But the situation at hand seemed to necessitate it. Plus, I started to feel like I was being followed. "You going somewhere, bud?" the driver asked with a black-toothed grin. I smiled back. "Yeah, you down to give me a lift?" Unsurprisingly, he did not go where I was directing him. Instead, leading me down some sketchy trail, I started anticipating when my first move was going to be. I'd taken a pocket knife from Jack's house and was clutching it in my hand as he drove. I decided that time was right when he stopped us in front of a rusty shack. "All right," he said, sounding comically foreboding. "Time to get out." I could see him starting to reach into his pocket, but I was faster. One jab to the ribs and he was screaming. I followed up by elbowing him in the face and dumping his squirming body to the ground outside. But not before I took his wallet. As I started driving away, I could see about 4 more equally sketchy-looking dudes coming out of the shack. I shuddered, not really wanting to think about what they had in store for me. In any case, I had a bigger issue at hand. I drove to the town I was talking about earlier and used some cash I'd taken from the guy's wallet to rent a motel for a few nights. Whilst I was sitting in my dingy accommodation, I started trying to put the pieces together. My copy was trying to kill me. There are multiple versions of my copy. There were dudes in armor roaming around in Jack's crops. The cops were looking for me, and I really couldn't go back to my apartment. Nope. I had no fucking clue where I was going. Feeling frustrated, I decided to head out for a few drinks. The motherfucker had around $600 in his wallet, so I was going to splurge on a few Heinekens. I'd also found a small revolver in its trunk, so I took it with me. Safe to say, I wasn't feeling safe. I made my way over to the tavern and sat at the bar. I ordered 2 beers and some chicken wings, 'cause why not? Just as I was getting relaxed, the bartender seemed to recognize me.
"Hey, you again?"
he said to me. Oh god, no, I thought to myself. Apparently my copy had been here earlier, presumably looking for me. How long ago? I asked him. Looking confused, he responded.
"About 10 minutes ago. Don't remember?"
10 minutes. Shit, feeling a bit nauseous, I went to the washroom and weighed my options. I suppose that it made sense to stay, given the fact that the copy had already left. He wouldn't have any reason to come back, right? As it turns out, I was wrong. Out of nowhere, I started getting a headache, and then my vision went wonky. I mean, I could still see, but my sight was distorted. Best way I can put it. It quickly subsided, but the nuisance was replaced by a sound of commotion coming from the bar. It sounded like somebody was arguing about something. It sounded like I was arguing about something. It was my voice. It was him. The bathroom door suddenly kicked open and somebody walked in, eventually coming to a stop outside my stall door. I wasn't taking any chances. I pulled out the revolver and fired 2 rounds off right then and there. I was met with surprised, labored groans as I climbed out up top. I landed right beside him, right beside my copy. This was the first time that we'd stared each other down directly. Staring into my own hate-filled eyes was something of an abstract feeling. Sure as hell didn't feel right. The headache and vision problems began coming back. I could tell that it was affecting him as well. It also looked like he was wearing a bulletproof vest, so that explained why he was still standing. Fight or flight, I thought. An extremely quick deliberation yielded flight. I fired off another round at him, the bullet narrowly grazing his ear, before running the hell out of there, into the confused and horrified faces of the bar patrons. Behind me, he fired off a few shots of his own, but luckily, none of them connected. Zigzagging my way through the streets and alleys, I took a convoluted route back to the motel parking lot, where I got into my commandeered vehicle and floored it out of there. I only made it about a half an hour before this shitty fucking truck broke down. It then took 2 more hours of walking in order to reach civilization again. Another small town, and another dingy motel. That's where my current situation has placed me. Obviously, I don't see an end in sight here. I'm on constant high alert, adrenaline fueling my paranoia. I think it's paid off, honestly. I've seen the same black sedan drive past my window about 4 times now. Yep, the black sedan was definitely on my ass. How many fucking people are chasing me at this point? I couldn't find any spare revolver ammo in the truck, and I don't think buying a gun is feasible right now. Not like my shooting was any good regardless. The sedan just made the 7th trip past my window. Are they just taunting me at this point? Certainly feels like it. Also, I've been experiencing some weird shit. Not like more headaches or anything, but sometimes I'll blink and the lights in my room will suddenly become darker, or a window will move a few inches. What do they call these? glitches in the Matrix? Well, add them to my laundry list of problems. I've been forcing myself not to sleep since I reckon these guys could probably just break in and shoot me in the head at any time. They know I'm in here, so I honestly don't know what they're waiting for. I've considered running off, but where am I going to go? They're obviously tracking me somehow, so that seems fruitless. I never remembered falling asleep at any point, but I must have, given the fact that I was jarred awake by gunshots. I rushed over to my window and looked outside, seeing the sedan now riddled with bullet holes. And guess who'd done it? It was my copy. I'm not sure if he thought it was me inside the vehicle. Maybe he had multiple targets. Whatever. He was certainly after me now. I could feel another headache coming on. Not only that, but the room around me seemingly started to shrink. Still in a reasonably cogent state of mind, I told myself that it wasn't real. I knew that it wasn't real. It all came to a head when I saw a shadow passing by the curtains. In a rather irrational move, I fired a shot at it. Not really sure what I was thinking there. Probably just pent-up frustration. I simultaneously missed and gave away my position. Still reeling from the headaches, I ran into the bathroom as I heard the door being knocked down. He was in. I hid in a tense silence as I heard him walk around the bedroom. This wasn't going to work, I thought to myself. There weren't many rooms that he had to go through before finding me. 2 bullets left. I grasped the revolver as he approached the bathroom door. The last room that he hadn't checked. The door suddenly flung open and I took my last 2 shots. Both misses. I was now cornered and my headache was reaching near unbearable heights. In a last-ditch effort, I tried tackling him. Thankfully, he took him by surprise and he went tumbling back into the bedroom. But that was about the extent of the fight I put up. I didn't have any combat experience after all, either on foot nor on the ground. He delivered a few blows to my stomach and I was suddenly laid out on the carpet, with him standing over me, aiming a pistol point blank at my temple. "Wait," I said, trying to come to terms with my obscure loss. "Look, you won. But could you do me a small favor and please explain to me what the fuck has been going on?" He lowered his gun slightly before smirking. "Yeah, sure. Least I could do." I got my answer, but I'm still not entirely sure if I fully understand it. He is me, not a clone. We were one and the same, just from different realities. He explained how the universe that he'd come from was considerably further ahead technology-wise than mine, far enough to the point where they'd nearly perfected a form of dimension hopping. But in his world, he was also a criminal, a large-scale thief. His most recent endeavor, stealing one of the devices that would allow somebody to traverse 2 different realities. Things went messy during his plan, and he was forced to use the device in order to orchestrate an extremely convoluted escape. Ultimately, he ended up here. But the problem with entering different realities lies in the fact that there will likely be another version of you. And that directly goes against the laws of natural universe. You see, him and I are identical, but at the same time we're not. There are subtle differences that set apart these realities, and when they start bleeding together, even in the slightest, the universe just can't accept it. At first the problems are marginal, but the longer that the 2 different versions of the same entity exist in one reality, the worse it gets. Not just for the 2 involved, but for the reality that they're in as a whole. That's why killing you was top priority for me. Nothing personal, that's a given, but I can't evade the fuckers that are trying to chase me if this reality begins to fall apart. You've felt the headaches, haven't you? Seen the visions? That's the universe saying that one of us has gotta go. I can deal with everything else later, but for now, He raises his gun once again. This needs to end. For fuck's sake. I put my arms in a defensive gesture. He hadn't explained everything yet. Like, why were there more than one copies of us in this reality? Like the one he killed when I first stumbled upon the security footage. But we never had a chance to get to that.
Drop the gun!
A booming voice suddenly came from out of nowhere. At first I thought it was the police, but I threw that idea aside when I caught glimpses of who it was. 4 large men wearing what looked like expensive militarized suits of armor were pointing massive armaments at us. Across their chests were white letters, NC. My copy sighed. Ah, shit. Before looking me in the eyes filled with annoyance. Look what you've fucking done. The armored men talked amongst themselves before one of them approached us. He took out some kind of device with a holographic screen. Look into this, he said to me. Without much of another option, I obliged, staring into the center of the screen as the thing seemingly scanned my face. After a few seconds, it was over. Here's the correct version. Take the other one away, he said, before putting the device away. The rest of the men restrained and led my copy out the door. I could barely react as all of this was happening, simply standing dead still until the sun came up. When everything was said and done, I finally went back to my apartment, still in an extreme state of shock. I haven't made any contact with the police, nor have the police attempted any contact with me, so I'm not really sure where that's going. I suppose I should be glad that this whole ordeal seems to have concluded. But there's one thing that still disturbs me. The last I saw of my copy, he was smiling.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing. And if you're an animal lover like me, please consider donating to the World Land Trust, a charity that aims to help wildlife through buying land, preventing development, and helping endangered species.